Hey everybody, welcome back to Lincoln Journal Stars 4 Downs. Luke Mullin and Amie Just here with you with your weekly Nebraska football practice update. Today, major news coming from head coach Matt Rhule. He spoke last week in his one meeting before the media, said he was going to bring in some fresh eyes. We learned that to be Dana Holgorsen. They're looking at things on the offensive side of the ball. Phil Snow looking at things on defense. And as it turns out, not just a simple one-week consulting gig. Dana Holgorsen, Matt Rhule announced, taking over as the team's offensive coordinator and play caller effective immediately for the rest of the regular season. Safe to say this is something that doesn't happen very often. Yes, coaches get fired mid-season, changes are made, staffs are shuffled, but very rarely, do you have somebody coming in externally taking over as the OC.
Yeah, very strange, but that's the situation that we're in now. There was a column earlier this week that I'd read about this is becoming more and more prevalent in college football. When you're not going to make a head coaching hire, you're going to make more of a staff change just because it's more affordable to do that. And there's less patience now, right? I mean, you look at Indiana, 10-win Indiana. You can turn things around quicker now, so there's less patience that comes along with that.
Yeah, and so obviously the question in everybody's minds is, how does this offense change? How does a new play caller change things up? Well, Dana Holgorsen, he has certainly quite the pedigree as an offensive play caller, developed some of the best offenses in college football, really, created havoc in the Big 12 back in the day. But this is a different football conference. This is the Big 10, power running. This is all stuff that Marcus Satterfield, had to learn, stuff that he said early in his tenure as offensive coordinator. Matt Rhule today, he kind of saying, yeah, obviously you're not going to come in, change that offense entirely, in a couple of days. He's not going to implement the air raid overnight, but he likes the principles of what Dana Holgorsen has implemented before. And what he really likes, I think, is a new look at calling plays and scheming these guys open in the Nebraska offense.
Yeah, and Matt Rhule even said it, that Dana is a lot more aggressive than he is. So he hopes that will help things a little bit with play calling and, going for things that are a little more out of Matt Rhule's comfort zone and being aggressive and trying to, not just, play to not lose, but play to win. And that's one of the things that I thought was most interesting about his comments today.
Yeah, I think what do you think also of the pragmatism for Matt Rhule here? I mean, 3 games left in the season, that offense is regressing, changes needed to be made, and this is a very bold one.
Yeah, it's a very bold one. We'll see. Obviously, right now, it's easy to say, well, I don't know about this, but if it works, then everybody's going to, think that he's a genius, and why didn't you do this sooner, and all of that, which is kind of what I wrote in my column on Sunday, like, why wait until 3 games left in the season? But, it's where we are, and hopefully for Nebraska that this can change some things.
Yeah, and also of note, how is this going to impact the staff? The way that Nebraska does things on offense. Well, for now, Marcus Satterfield remaining on staff, Matt Rhule said, they had that conversation. It's a situation. Obviously, he's demoted. He's no longer the OC. He's no longer the play caller. That's a situation a lot of coaches would easily just fire me, if I'm not going to do the job that you hired me here to do. Well, Satterfield staying on coaching tight ends. Safe to say he will be the highest paid tight ends coach for the last couple of weeks. But in all seriousness, that is a very, very, I think, humble and telling thing of his character to do for this football team.
Yeah, it says a lot about who he is, I think, as a person. Because that's like a shot right to you, right? Like it's very humbling when something like that happens to you. And it feels like human nature to be like, oh, well, you don't want me then, and leave, right? But by what it sounds like, Marcus and Dana Holgorsen are working together as we're recording this, and, as is the rest of the offensive staff, and just trying to figure out how they can win the next one of the next 3 games, maybe more, who knows. But it's going to take teamwork to get back on track, and got to put your egos aside, and I think that's what they're all trying to do right now.
Yeah, so this was obviously the major change that came from this bye week that Nebraska has with these final 3 weeks of its season ahead. And, really some of the other aspects of that bye week was really, as Matt Rule said, I mean, you're this far in the season, you're not going to be able to change things on a wide-scale effort, but, the simple practice efforts, getting some of the younger guys, the message of, going out there, playing without kind of that fear that they'd shown, and obviously that message of consistency, the same thing Matt Rule was talking about last week. It just seems like this bye week was very important for them, yes, to take that long, hard look at things, but at the same time, drill in some of that same stuff they've been talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. There are, 3 weeks left of the season. They want it to be more. But what will that look like? That starts internally.
Yes, and big question for this upcoming game. Who's going to play a quarterback? Obviously, Dylan Raiola knocked out of that UCLA game in his last time Nebraska was out there on that field, that back injury. And Heinrich Haarberg, he's going to be preparing to be the starter, Matt Rule said. They're still going to wait, see how Raiola does, if he can practice this week. Daniel Kalen, they'll also get him ready to go. But it's worth noting, we're not going to have an update from Matt Rule until Thursday on that one.
Yeah, and we probably wouldn't know anything on that regard anyway, right? Because it was the idle week this past week, they didn't really push Dylan at all. Who knows if he would have been able to play had they had a game on Saturday, but he hasn't practiced. They're looking to see what he can do on Tuesday, and hopefully we might get an answer, but it feels like they're going to play this one close to the vest, and we won't find out until Saturday when we're in Los Angeles.
Yeah, when you're changing offensive coordinators, dealing with a quarterback injury, so many unknowns in the air. Yeah, I think they're gonna for the most part leave it at that. And hey, the unknowns at quarterback do not end with Nebraska. USC also potentially making that change. Lincoln Riley said last week, Jaden Mayava, he's taking over for Miller Moss, which I thought was interesting. I mean, Miller Moss, he's thrown for 2,500 yards, like double the touchdowns to the interceptions, but a little bit of a different, that dual threat in Mayava that they're getting was really good at UNLV last year. But hey, he's only thrown like 10 passes for USC this year. Like, he's not played a lot in a Trojan uniform.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what Nebraska's defense schemes up for him, just because there is that lack of film and like what he would look like in that system.
Yeah, got to worry about him exposing Nebraska with his legs. Several quarterbacks have done that so far this season, but not our usual weekly schedule here. As I said, no coordinators, no players. That will be a change for Nebraska this week, again, with that situation happening with Dana Holgerson taking over as that offensive coordinator. So next time we hear from somebody, it will be Matt Rule on Thursday, again, ahead of that big road trip to USC. Nebraska season, these final 3 weeks coming up next.